One day, I was sitting on my back porch and I heard a loud noise like a limb breaking from a tree and falling. So I looked over and the limb hadn't completely fallen. It was just hanging there, swinging back and forth. I immediately knew that I needed to look up pendulums. There was something there that I needed to see. And it was so incredible because it's the perfect analogy for life. I'm going to read this part from Wikipedia that really stood out to me. When a pendulum is displaced sideways from its resting equilibrium position, it is subject to a restoring force due to gravity that will accelerate it back toward the equilibrium position. Our natural state is the state of rest and equilibrium. Our souls, our higher selves, are like the gravity. Our souls are like the anchor of our being, constantly trying to pull us back to our natural whole state. But then when we introduce thoughts and actions that pull us out of this state, we are basically pushing the pendulum and causing it to begin swinging. We are meant to feel whole, safe, secure, empowered, and at peace. But when we act from a place that is the opposite of this, through fear, insecurities, and disempowerment, we pull ourselves out of a state that should be natural to us. The swings, the ups and downs that we begin to experience, whether emotionally or in our lives, are meant to alert us to something that is wrong. But we've gotten so used to the swings because this is how life has been since childhood. We've known nothing else. So it becomes normal to us not being in a state of equilibrium. Often, instead of allowing it to alert us, we push the pendulum again out of fear. A lot of times we do this because we're just trying to protect ourselves in some way, whether emotionally or physically. Because we believe this is normal, we continue to combat the difficulty and the stress we're facing the same ways we always have since childhood, when we were more vulnerable and dependent on our caregivers. We were so dependent that all we could do was try to find ways to cope with our environment and the difficult emotions we faced. We have all of these ways that we try to regulate our emotions or avoid or distract, or we set aside our true needs and desires to maintain our environment. We develop these ways of coping that are completely unconscious to us, which means that we will unconsciously continue to push the pendulum. Because we are unconscious to it, it takes the difficulty really ramping up in our lives for us to realize that something is wrong. And we often want to believe it's the fault of something outside of us because we're not seeing these little touches we keep doing to the pendulum. It can be very difficult to have these realizations, and can even be followed by a short period of anger or even depression because we can no longer blame and project. We've seen the truth and we have to take accountability. How long this period lasts is determined by how quickly you choose to adopt a new perspective. In the end, it's so rewarding because you are allowing yourself to return to a state of peace and rest, where creating all of the good things in life that you really want is natural to you. I just want to clarify what I mean by accountability on this channel, because we tend to look at everything through a lens of morality. When we hear the word accountability, we often think accountability in terms of things we've done wrong or ways we've hurt someone else or even hurt ourselves. But what I mean by accountability is taking full credit for why we don't have total abundance, joy, and peace in our lives, and why every single one of our needs and desires aren't being met. It's not about beating yourself up over something you believe you've done wrong. It's about understanding what's blocking our happiness. If there's an area where you're constantly having to face the same emotional trigger and it goes on unresolved for a long time, the swings can become extreme. Because deep down we so badly want to be in a state of peace and joy, to compensate for the extreme negative swings, we swing back the opposite way and try to provide ourselves with an extreme high through all forms of addiction, excitement, and ways that we try to give ourselves an emotional boost. But it never stops the swinging because we haven't actually pulled our hand away yet to allow ourselves to return to equilibrium. We have to have a shift in perspective where we view the stress, the difficulty, the fear, and the lack as unnatural, so it can begin to alert us. Then we have to begin to process how we originally began to push the pendulum out of its resting state. We have banished the true impact of the really heavy moments from childhood into the dark parts of our minds because the focus was survival, not processing what was happening, which we wouldn't have even been capable of doing. We continue to stay in this survival mode until we are able to fully process the way these experiences impacted us. We have to process the way they made us feel disempowered and afraid, and see the ways we've been trying to manage and cope with the fear and insecurities. The absolute key to pulling your hand away for good and allowing yourself to experience all of the peace, joy, and abundance that flows from your natural state of being is recognizing that you are not the limited, incapable, unlovable, disempowered person that you have come to believe that you are. You adopted this belief because of your experiences. By allowing yourself to come back to equilibrium, you can then experience all of the good things that come from being in your natural state.